And good morning. My name's Heather Leeson. I'm with Open Knowledge Foundation, and I'm here today with my colleague Anders Pedersen, who is the Knowledge Development Lead. And we're going to talk today all about open spending and budgets and transparency and what does that all mean. So, Anders, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm in Canada and my apple tree is blooming, so I'm a happy camper. I know that everyone's watching or might be watching this later from around the world, but we have late springs here. And you,
Fantastic.
where are you based?
I am in DC and just survived a thunderstorm yesterday. So things are very humid and very warm, and people are just starting to say hello to the aircon.
Yeah, the one thing I know about Washington, D.C. is that they love their weather data. I'm like nuts about it, and I know that we're going to be talking about spending data today, but that's the one thing I always take back from Washington is like, wow, you people are weather crazy, more weather crazy than Canadians.
Yeah, totally. It's the weather and it's the public transit delays. So that's it. All right.
So tell me more. What is open spending?
So OpenSpending is both a platform and a community. It's more than anything a community of interested journalists, budget nerds, and civil society organizations from around the world who are getting together at events, on our mailing lists, and around on-site community events to talk about how we make a budget, spending, procurement, all kinds of financial data open to the public. So we've been used to, for years, not having access to some of the most basic information about what our governments do. So whether it's my local city council, whether it's my province, whether it's my federal state budget, such information has not traditionally been available. And so what we're working on at OpenSpending is to enable citizens and activists to, when they get this data, get their hands on this data, how they can easily share it and bring it to their communities and like tell stories about it, help people understand what money is spent on their local school, infrastructure project, or what have you. So I'm gonna today walk through a few examples of how folks have been using OpenSpending, and I'm going to show some of the resources that we have available that can help you get cracking on budget and spending data.
I like that open spending is trying to make it open. First of all, make it open, but demystify budgets. I think a lot of people are like, "Oh man, my city council budget. What the heck does that mean? What does it matter to me?" And so, I'm looking forward to seeing some examples for sure.
Okay, cool. So let's kick off just a few here as a start, and then I think those will help give a better idea about what kind of work we do. All right. So
You have to do the sharing screen song, because there's a little bit of delay. It's showing up now, though. Go ahead.
Okay, fantastic. So this is a project that we did with an organization based in Nicaragua. So we got in touch last year with a budget transparency organization called IEPP, and they came to us and said like, "Hey, we have all this budget information from Nicaragua. How do we make this available to the public in a more useful fashion?" And so we decided to join forces, and we helped the organization to basically take the budget data, standardize it in like a simple spreadsheet, put it together in a way where it could then go up and be visualized in these bubble charts. So the bubble charts are one of the visualization libraries that we have at OpenSpending and that every organization can make use of. So that means because this is all open source tool, you can yourself like create a budget side like this one, and then essentially show where the money goes. So let's just like walk through some few examples. So this is in Spanish, but it shows, for instance, what what funds are spent for education. If I want to know that, I see that that 55 billion total is spent in the Nicaraguan national budget, and I see that 13 billion are spent on education. I then click on that bubble, and I will then see that some of these are spent for some parts of education, some parts are spent for other parts of the educational system. And in that way, I will make a spreadsheet that did not seem very attractive to people and very interesting to people. It's now much more compelling and much more clear that, oh, my country spent this amount in education compared to, for instance, service costs and like cost on interest rates on the loans we have. So that's one example, and just a very clear way of providing a breakdown of how you can visualize it. On sort of a side note on how this came together was the fact that we built an OpenSpending WordPress plugin, and so the WordPress plugin makes it really friendly for users to create these visualizations yourself, because basically we allow you to download your WordPress plugin, then load up your data in OpenSpending, and boom, you can have your visualizations right there.
So with this OpenSpending WordPress plugin, do you have any idea of how many times it's been downloaded or used, or?
It's yes. Since we launched it in January, it's been downloaded 100 times. So we need to tweak it a bit more, but 100 times is what it's been downloaded since we launched it here, like early January.
Yeah, I didn't know that there was a plugin, so I'm super excited about it, because I think anything that you can do to make it easier for it to use open source tools to integrate and tell your stories, that's fantastic. So glad to hear that is there.
Totally. Great. So another example that I wanted to show is an organization that we worked with in Bosnia, and so they came to us and said, we'd like to visualize the various budgets across provinces, and so this is an example of like when you really can do like more complicated stuff with OpenSpending as well. So what you'll see in the screen share is how we provided like detailed breakdown of across the very many different provinces there are in Bosnia-Herzegovina. And then for each of these provinces, you can see not only the budget, but also the calculations of what citizens pay in tax. And so this is what we, another tool that we developed, not only to show, so I've already shown how we help like increase budget transparency by showing the budget breakdowns, but we also developed a tax calculator that help you set, for instance, in this case, I make 1,500 km per year. How does that translate to the payment, the tax payments that I actually, where do my tax dollars go, essentially? And so that's a way of enhancing the availability for citizens to basically see, like, hey, where do my tax dollars go? So this is again an open source tool that was originally developed in order to show UK tax payments, and now it's been translated into in Japanese, in Bosnian, and so forth. So it's really like a tool that can travel everywhere.
How many languages has it been translated in?
So our various different tools have been translated into like a number of different languages. We have an OpenSpending guide that is on our community site. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to type it in, and that has been translated 6 times into 6 languages.
That's so amazing. And so from that community page, you certainly want to help people. That if somebody wants to translate it, that's an opportunity to get involved in the community, right? So that's just kind of a shout out that I'm sure that that learning to translate and do that would be Fantastic. Oh,
Absolutely.
and you have a page. Oh, look, I'm a plant. You have a page.
We have a Get Involved page where you can help wrangle budget data and where you can also help us translate. So you can both help translate the core OpenSpending site, which is helping making the sites available in multiple languages. So, for instance, it's already now available in Russian. It recently became available in Polish as well, in Japanese. And then we have our OpenSpending guide, which is really how you walk through your work with budget and spending data from the very early when you get the budget data in a PDF. How do you clean up that PDF? How do you put it into a spreadsheet? And then how do you take the spreadsheet and put it onto OpenSpending?
Fun.
Great. So let me just, while we're at it, let's just show. So the OpenSpending guide is in our help section, and there you'll see that it's available in English, French, Italian, Nepali, Romanian, Spanish, and Turkish so far. Great. So let me just take you to one more side, and then I'll be done with screen shares for now, at least. And that's the OpenSpending main site. And so what I've shown so far is some of the localized versions where communities, where citizens get together and develop a local OpenSpending site. And so what you can also do is you don't have to create your local site. We very much encourage that because we think that local sites are fantastic in helping citizens understand local budgetary issues. But the OpenSpending main site is also a great place for you to go. So here you can go and upload your dataset that can be your local city budget. It can be the budget of your university. It can be the budget of your province or state. And then you can, in some easy steps, in 15 minutes, you can build a visualization around the spreadsheet that you're uploading. So you take your basic CSV file, which is a spreadsheet formatted file. You upload it, and then you assign the various columns to what kind of values they have. So, for instance, which column has the amount, which column has the year, and then when you're done with that, you get a nice visualization that you can then take and upload on your own blog or on your own website, essentially. And so what you see here is that we actually already have contributions from 67 countries. We have more than 700 data sets been uploaded so far, and that's a total of like 25 million rows, all in all, which is quite a lot. So people keep adding all the time. And if you're curious about what is added, what stuff is added recently, you can go to the datasets tab, and that will show you the progression of how data is added to the site. So, for instance, the most recent one was what looks like the national budget of Paraguay. And so you can go have a look at Paraguay and see, oh, they actually did a ton of visualizations for it. Amazing.
Wow.
We're just going to have a look at one of them. And here you see sort of the tree map that the users have been created. You can even take this data, create your own visualization, and add that to your own site. Because this is all open data, you can download the data that people upload, and everyone can access and benefit from it. So that's like, wow, they've created 10 different visualizations, each for the individual year.
So I have a question regarding this. So we have the OpenSpending community is so dynamic, and there's all these different ways to get involved, and there's all these people using it in different ways. How do you know, or can you tell me some of the impact stories? So what I'd like to know about the Paraguay story is, first of all, if you're from Paraguay and that's your project, can you please contact us? Because I would love to see a blog post or learn a little bit more about who these people are that are trying to make this transparency. That's one question. And, did they have an effect, like with the governments, because they're trying to affect change by using these visualizations. So in their conversations, I'm sure that they're doing that. I know you probably have some examples from around the world that you've encountered since you've been a part of this community and been leading it for quite a while. So maybe you could share some, human faces or human stories about open spending.
So
Spending Stories 101.
Yeah, totally. So I mean, one of the best things that we've done is we from time to time we're running regular community calls where people get together, but we've also been running global, what we call spending data parties. And one of the first ones we ran July last year. We got folks together from 20 cities around the world over a weekend to work on budget and spending data. And one of the communities who got super involved in that process was the open spending community in Nepal, in Kathmandu. And so they visualized, they opened up the Kathmandu metro budget, which is a huge part of Nepal's GDP, essentially. And what they've done today is they've launched by now, like 10 months later, they've now launched their own Open Spending Nepal site. They're in touch with lots of organizations in Nepal. So, like, they had stories of, folks from the central bank coming by and saying, like, hey, this looks super interesting. They had people from the aid community being very interested in, like, what this thing is. And so, in a place like Kathmandu, what you really want is people from various communities to get together, from journalists to like government practitioners to civil society leaders. And definitely what we are seeing there is that the open spending community is gathering such a unique community and getting people together from from all different backgrounds and all different sectors. Another example is in Japan, where we have a very active community of something in the area of like 100 volunteers who have created local budget visualizations for more than 100 cities in Japan. And so that's again resulted in like a huge interest from journalists. It's been on national TV. It's been on received lots of local press attention, and now at the regional OGP meeting, you're seeing like national Japanese politicians who are getting very interested in the Open Government Partnership, and we certainly believe that like doing a local push for budget transparency and for open data, that's helped foster that kind of conversation. So what we really like try to support and really endorse is when communities develop bottom-up initiatives, and when our tools can be used in such a way, we are very excited about that.
Wow, so that's two stories. So I think it's amazing. So you talked about journalists using it and civil society folks. Do you have any examples of journalists using open spending that you might know?
Yeah. So, like one of the, let me pull up one example from that.
I'm in the doing data journalism course right now, which is the big MOCC or whatever it is, massive online course, and it's really interesting to me as to the line of it, and I think that journalism and how you talk about budgets is a big part of some of the work that happens, especially in cities around the world. I know in my city it's a big deal. There's actually people who spend a lot of time going through the city budget and sharing details, so that's why I was thinking about journalists and just some examples from their point of view.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, for journalists, so my background is actually, I spent quite a few years in financial journalism, and one of the challenges you have as a journalist is that it's not necessarily very easy to tell complicated stories about budgetary information, about spending. And while a lot of journalism is certainly happening around budgets, around detailed budget lines, such as like, are we going to spend 200 or 300 millions on vocational training, right? That's all about budgetary information, but it's very complicated to communicate. And so what we've seen is that the sort of the simplicity of the open spending tools, that they have come in very handy in terms of getting people to allowing journalists to easily visualize complex matters. So instead of being dependent as a journalist on like your own like fancy IT team, if you don't have such a team, you can use OpenSpending, develop a visualization, and then put it on your own website in an easy format. And we've seen that from like Decide, Libération in France. Number of different journalism agencies have used OpenSpending in order to show, like, for instance, the national budget.
So what are some of the challenges and opportunities you've found with OpenSpending as a project? Like I know that it's been around for a couple of years, and it's amazing to see all those data sets and all those people self-organizing, and you have like a really good community track so people can very clearly get involved. But what are some of the challenges and opportunities that that you see that maybe others could help you with?
So certainly, I mean, one of our big, I think there are a few challenges. I mean, one is that budgetary information is complex, and so we very often rely on having, for instance, on having very good documentation crafted by community members, and ideally having that documentation and this information translated. So, for instance, like the very active Nepali community, very active communities in Latin America, very active communities in Japan. One of the reasons why we've seen that excel is that, you know, that there started to being produced like localized guides, localized information about how to work with budgetary information. So providing localized and translated materials, that's certainly one thing that's very important in terms of like scaling the work that is done around budget information and budget data. We also see that there's a huge challenge in actually working with and getting access to good budget data. So very often communities are stuck with very long PDFs. Like I, for instance, did a training in Nigeria a month ago, and the data that we were working with was a 900-page PDF for which was the budget of the river state in the Niger Delta. Now it's very difficult to work with a 900-page PDF unless you really know what you're looking at, and so getting the skills and getting the tools to communities that can help communities to work, getting through all these hard copies, all these PDFs. That's something that's a challenge, but also something where we see huge improvements in terms of what tools are available. So we see tools like Tabula. That's an excellent PDF scraping tool that's really helped like propel a lot of organizations and communities to work much more efficiently with getting through pages of PDFs and get the data liberated and put into a spreadsheet so that it can be available to the public. And so we're trying to develop those guides to help people work on that.
It's fantastic, and I think it's about, you know, localizing and sharing as much in education. I think the concept of being able to share and feel like you're part of your city and understanding the budget data and diving into it. 4 years ago, we were talking about this yesterday. I ran a tech event yesterday with a local person who's part of the OpenSpending community, and he worked on a project 4 years ago at Random Acts of Kindness, doing kind of a budget dive on Toronto city budget, and then he moved forward and he works on a project called Better Budgeting, and he continues to use OpenSpending, which is use use OpenSpending as part of that program. So it's really exciting to see how that kind of evolution has happened in a local space. And I think that it really does require somebody kind of to be at the champion. And you talked about champions from Nigeria to Nepal to, you know, just those different examples. And I think that's really exciting. You know, now I have all these questions about what are they doing in Paraguay with the budget, and I never thought I was going to ask that question. And today I'm coming with that question. So we have a couple more minutes. There hasn't been any questions, but if you do have questions, you can certainly add them into the Google Hangout for us. This video will be live, and we certainly respond at any time if you have questions about it. So Anders, since there hasn't been any questions, is there common questions that you get from people about OpenSpending that you might want to share back? Some quick Q&A stuff.
Yeah, so I think some of the I mean, so we get basically two kinds of questions. Like, first of all, like how do you do this? Like, isn't this like really complicated and difficult to work with like large Excel files and that kind of stuff? And for that, there's to say OpenSpending has fantastic guides and materials that can help you get from a PDF version of your city budget or national budget to a final spreadsheet that's going into OpenSpending and getting visualized. And it is totally possible. We have mailing lists, we have resources that can help you do that. And the second type of questions we get very often is like, so what can you even use it for? And for that, I've already shown some examples of like civil society organizations, journalists, communities using it. And for that, there's also just to say like we are just keep seeing like interesting examples of how OpenSpending is used. So like one highlight I really also want to like point to here in the end is we've talked a little bit about how communities are involved in budget processes, and certainly like one of the most interesting examples of that is Open Budget Oakland, which was a local budget transparency initiative developed by activists in Oakland. They decided to publish the local Oakland budget online and had like common features, generating a discussion so that everyone could discuss and talk about the local budget. And so that's certainly like driving community involvement. That's some of the most exciting use cases we're seeing of OpenSpending, I think.
Fantastic. So thanks so much, Anders, for your overview of OpenSpending and what's the community. So just very quick, since there has not been questions, by all means, anybody who has questions about OpenSpending, please do contact. There's a Community Get Involved page link that I added. Anders, what are your next steps in terms of the community? I know you have some regular Google Hangouts. How can they join them? Like all those kinds of details about how can people get more and how can they connect with each other to learn?
So the best way to connect with us is get on our OpenSpending mailing lists. There you will there you can ask the questions that you need in order to get started with OpenSpending. You can reach out to other people in the community. Maybe there are people in your area and your country already working on this stuff. So the OpenSpending mailing list is a great place to start to get involved and reaching out to other people and meeting other people who are working with this stuff. So that's one thing. Get in touch on Twitter. If you're sitting with a spreadsheet and you're working on it right now, get in touch on Twitter and we'll try and see what we can do in terms of helping you out. We have an IRC Freenode channel called OpenSpending, and there you can as well get in touch if you have questions about how the data that you're trying to upload, for instance, on OpenSpending, or visualizations that you're trying to work out that doesn't work out. So we're there to help you on a number of different platforms. We also have a community blog. We're super interested in getting input from you in terms of like what kind of work are you doing on budget data, what kind of interesting stuff have you been involved in that helps inform and engage citizens around budget and spending data. So there are lots of ways to get involved. We also have monthly Google Hangouts where you can connect with people face to face.
I am furiously writing these notes for people who look at it later with all the links onto the Google Hangout. Anders, so great to talk with you today and to learn all about open spending. Again, you know, budgets should never be stale. And what you're showing is that people can take that data and understand it and dig into it in a visual way. And I forgot to Skype, pardon me. Take it and look at it in a visual way and use it for their own activism, whether they be a journalist, a local citizen, or a civil society group. I guess, you know, I always wonder, you know, are governments using this? That would be awesome to know. But I just care that people are using it around the world. So any last comments from yourself, Mr. Anders?
No other questions. Just I really hope you get in touch and ping us on Twitter, on IRC, on the mailing list, and we look forward to help you crack on with budget and spending data.
Fantastic. Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining us, and if you're watching this later, don't forget to contact us and ask any questions you have, and ask our global community of folks, because you never know who might have the answers. Thanks again.